Hello, friends. It's a pleasure to be with you again in another Kumi session this week. This week, the topic is on education, and we're highlighting an amazing organization or a school that I have to admit, I did not know that it existed before I got involved with Sabil, because of so many people who were part of Sabil were very much engaged with this important school, Rawdat El-Zuhur. I myself, I think there is so much need for me to learn more about this school and the amazing work that they are doing. But before we start, I want to remind you all that this session is being broadcasted live on Facebook, and it is also being recorded. Hopefully, we will upload it on YouTube in the coming few days. So if you don't want your picture to appear, just please turn off your video feed. If there's new people on the meeting today, my name is Omar Harami, and I work at Sabil Jerusalem. I'm a Palestinian Christian, and I've been part of the Sabil community for over 16 years now. Kumi is a product of Sabil, of Palestinian liberation theology. It was a way of how could we really work more together, be more inclusive, be a platform that would share the stories and the amazing work that everyone is doing, in the hopes that we will all advocate together through nonviolent means to achieve justice for all people who are living in Palestine and Israel, but especially our people who are living under military occupation. Today I have to, I'm very excited because it's a part that those two people who are very much involved with the Zuhur, with Rawdat El-Zuhur, they're also very much involved with Sabil. One is Samia Khoury. Samia Khoury is one of the founders of Sabil, and she's like our grandmother, but she's like the naughty grandmother, which we really like because she's always raising trouble. She wrote a beautiful piece speaking truth to power yesterday, challenging the US government, saying that that charity starts at home, especially with the US trying so much to fund so many places of conflict, to include and do more conflict, where there's so many people who are suffering in the US, whether the homeless people or the people who are living under the poverty line. But we were going to stick with our tradition. I'm just always excited about Samia Khoury when she joins with us. So we're going to ask Samia Khoury to introduce herself. Auntie Samia, can you unmute yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. It's good to be with you again. Aside from the Thursday meetings, which I really enjoy and look forward to. I've been a community volunteer for years and years. I forgot even as early as the 60s, maybe after I got married and moved to Jerusalem. And I was very heavily involved with the YWCA, traveling abroad for international conferences and on the local level and national level. And in the meantime, my aunt, Elizabeth Nasir, one of 8 of my aunts, my father was one boy amongst 8. Can you imagine what he must have gone through being pampered by the 8 of them? But anyway, she was the founder of Rawdat El-Zuhur. There's a very nice story behind Rawdat El-Zuhur. And she always insisted, why do you spend most of your time at the YWCA? Why don't you come and help me with Rawdat El-Zuhur? Eventually, I did. Rawdat El-Zuhur started by my aunt, one of the 8. She was a social worker, the first social worker, actually, woman social, head of the social welfare department in Jerusalem, which was a novelty at the time for a woman to be in charge of that, although it is very natural for social welfare work to be done by women. But anyway, so on one of her tours in Ramallah, she was going on a in the taxi, she found two little girls begging on the street. It was wet and raining in February 1952. She could not resist stopping the car and asking these girls, "What are you doing here?" They said, "We have no food, we have no money, we have nothing. We are just begging to get a meal." So she took them in her car and she said, "Take me to your home, let me see your home." And it was a miserable home, miserable home. Literally nothing except few rags on the floor that the parents were sitting on. So she immediately took it upon herself never to allow a girl to earn her bread by begging on the streets of Jerusalem. And this was her mission, is to collect girls from everywhere. She was seeking them everywhere, in hovels, in caves. She'd go to the old city, sit in the coffee shops and ask the drivers, where do these girls go and from where are they coming? And she'd pick them up and bring them to her home. She turned her home into a home for destitute girls. And she called it Rawdat El-Zuhur. You know what Rawdat El-Zuhur means? Garden of flowers. Rawda in Arabic can mean also a kindergarten. But for her, she wanted these girls to feel like they were flowers, really. And she didn't want to put a stigma on the name of the place, like it's an orphanage or a destitute institution or something. She wanted to give them a pleasant name. And to her, what was very important is to make these girls happy and smile. And the first thing she did, she had a gramophone, you know, those old things that were handled by putting a record on this machine and turning it. And the first thing she did was to dance with these girls and bring joy to their lives. And that is how Rawdat El-Zuhur started, for these girls who were begging on the streets. And they just looked lovely. And she was so proud of them. And she just depended on her friends to support her and church people and things like this. And then in 1967, actually, when there was need for schools that were not under the Israeli government, the home changed into a school, and it already had a license from Jordan to run a school, because she was teaching them really not formal education. She was teaching them how to read and write, literacy, and she was teaching them how to some skills of sewing and cooking, so that they could work at institutions or homes or have a decent income. And so that we decided to start changing the programs and it gradually introduce the formal curriculum. But the values and the basic spirit of the place remains up to this day. Music and dancing is very much part of the place. And one of her basic requirements was always that the teachers must be pleasant. They don't have to be beautiful, but they have to be pleasant. One time a man walked into the office. He didn't know what he's doing, where he's going, you know, he was sulking. And she said, "Why are you sulking?" The man was shocked, you know. She always shocked us with what she'd say. My Aunt Lizzie was a character anyway. But that was her motto in life, is joy and happiness for these girls and to secure a future for them. And at the time, I mean, she didn't charge anybody. Even after we started having school, they did not charge fees except the minimal. And the teachers were not really requiring very high salaries. And then later on, of course, after things changed and the occupation took place, and it was not temporary anymore. And as you can see now, it's becoming a permanent event and situation, and things have completely changed. So finance has become a challenge, and the curriculum has become a challenge for all the schools in Jerusalem. And I I carried the legacy of my Aunt Lizzie after she retired. And she was one of the very few people who founded the place and retired while she was still alive. And it was nice that the students were able to honor her and have a real nice musical for her before she passed away, a year after she had retired. And now the present chair of the board is Abla Nasir, and I will leave it to her to tell you what are the challenges that they are facing at the moment. I'm part of the General Assembly, and I still support them and try to help in fundraising. But the everyday procedures and follow-up and all these challenges are really part of Abla's duty with the principal, Rawdat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Auntie Samia. I think for some reason Abla has just is having some computer problems and she's no longer in the meeting.
Oh my goodness.
So 1 second, we're gonna see if she is able to come back.
Is she with us?
If you're with us but on a different name, Auntie Abla, please write something on in the chat, because I saw that you were with us under the name of Fadwa.
Yeah.
I'm sure that she will join us. She will join us now after she deals with the internet problem. I want to ask you. Your father had 7 sisters?
8 sisters.
8 sisters. And your aunt was number what?
My father was number 4. The oldest sister founded Birzeit University, which now is the Birzeit University, actually, but it's no more a family concern. It's a public institution and it has an independent board of trustees. But we're still part of the founding members, my sister, my brother, and I. So you can imagine after my father married, they were looking forward for a boy. And then my sister was born and I was born. I was a calamity as a second child. And then my brother finally arrived and my mother decided 2 to 1 is enough rather than have 8 to 1. So that's the story of our life. But they were all very active, the 8 aunts. I mean, her twin sister, Auntie Lizzie, was a twin, part of a twin. And both the twins were social workers. And she was living in Jaffa when the 48 events took place. And she moved to Birzeit for a while. And then she moved to Jerusalem when she took over. She was offered this job of director of social welfare. Yeah.
I want to ask you, we're encouraging people to write questions if they are interested. I'm sure many people are interested, but there's an opportunity to use these questions until we figure. It seems Abla Nasir has an internet problem because I'm trying to write her and it's not working out. So you have served many years with El-Zuhur. What are like your most memorable moments?
The children, their smiles, their laughs, and the joy they used to have from just being there. I mean, the children were looking forward. I mean, they were sad when the school closes. It had always had a happy atmosphere, and I was almost there every day. I mean, my aunt, I got that from her, you know, she always there to support the principal. The principal at the time was Salwa Zananiri, who had started the school with Auntie Lizzie. So she had a very long journey with her. And then when visitors came, they enjoyed singing for them and dancing for them and performing anything for the visitors. And the parents are very cooperative, which is very nice. I think this is a very unique relationship, because we felt always that unless there is cooperation between home and school, the mission would not be really complete. I remember one time a student came with a very red face, and the principal told him, "What happened?" She said, "Nothing, nothing." She was sure that he had been slapped by a parent. And he said, "Nothing, nothing." And she insisted, the principal insisted at the time. And when she found out that he had been slapped by his father, she immediately called the father and she said, "I want to see you right now." And he came. The parents are very cooperative. They never say no whenever the principal calls them. And he came. And she said, "We don't allow the teachers to raise their hand against the students. And beating is not at all allowed." He said, "I apologize. I apologize. I don't know what happened to me." And they really appreciated that she follows up with them, which is very, very important, very important.
Thank you very much. The good news is Abla is with us.
Good.
I'm sorry, I had problems with my laptop. I couldn't log in. Anyway, now I'm logging in with my iPad. Sorry for being.
Don't worry. Thank you for being with us. Before we start, could you please introduce yourself? That's the tradition at Kumi. Each speaker introduce her or himself.
Yeah, I'm Abla Nasir. I'm retired, but I'm supposed to be an educator. I worked at the French schools. I was the principal for a number of years and led some educational institutions like the Tamer Institute for Community Education and the YWC of Palestine. Yeah, and I'm on the board of Rawdat El-Zuhur.
And the chair of the board, Abla.
Yeah, okay, I'm the chair. And I'm a member of the General Assembly of Sabil, which I take pride in.
Thank you very much for being with us, Abla. During the time that, I don't know when exactly you got disconnected from the meeting, but Samia gave a brief introduction on the history of Rawdat El-Zuhur and how the school started. Yeah. I have a number of questions in the chat, and maybe that would be helpful if just to help people understand because Samia spoke about the Palestinian curriculum or not following the Israeli curriculum. That's special about Rawdat El-Zuhur and other schools. But could you please just explain the two different curriculums that are available in Jerusalem?
There is the curriculum that is imposed by the Israeli municipality or Israeli Ministry of Education, and it's imposed on the public schools that are under the municipality control. They are run by the municipality of Jerusalem. They use the Israeli, as far as I know, they use the Israeli curriculum, and they prepare the students for the Bigrut, which is the secondary examination that allows them to go on to universities. Now, there are three types of schools. You have the public schools run by the government, and since in Jerusalem case they are run by the municipality, and then there are the private schools, mostly run by church-related organizations, and and they follow the Palestinian curriculum. And there are the UNRWA schools that are run by the United Nations Relief Work Agency. They also follow the Palestinian curriculum. And there are some schools that are run by associations like Rawdat El-Zuhur. We follow the Palestinian curriculum. Nowadays, there are some, how can I say it? The Israeli Ministry of Education is trying to impose their own curriculum on all schools, including the private schools. What they are doing now, as I understand, yesterday I had a meeting with the Princess Basman. They have a school for children with disabilities. They are changing the books. They take the books, that are printed by the Palestinian Authority, and they change whatever they want to change, like especially in history and geography. So any mention of Palestine, any mention of nationhood. I mean, we're familiar with this during the occupation of the West Bank, before the Palestinian Authority came in the 90s. All books were censored by the Israelis. And it was so funny, that I still remember, because I was at the French school at the time, one of the history books of the grade 5, it was, there was a chapter about the Crusaders, and they came to Israel. In the book, it says Israel. At the time, there was no Israel at the time, it was Palestine. But imagine the type of censorship that they tried to that they imposed on books, and you can take it from there. A lot of work had to be done by the teachers to go beyond the books, to keep, to preserve the identity, the Palestinian identity, and the heritage, and the culture, and the history. And this was also looked on as something, against the security of the state of Israel. Maybe I'm going beyond your question now, but it reminded me of those times, and now it is being repeated, trying to be imposed on schools in Jerusalem, all schools, not only public schools, but also privately run schools. Yeah.
There are multiple questions that are being shared in the chat, or they're coming to me on a personal level. So one of them, the questions is for Auntie Samia. Auntie Samia, during the first Intifada, many schools had serious problems and many challenges. How was the first Intifada for Rawdat El-Zuhur?
We had to close for a while, just like any other school. For many schools were closed. I mean, there was no way you could run a school at the time. But it was for elementary schools, it was not as long as it was for secondary schools and for the universities, like Birzeit. I mean, I remember it was closed for quite a number of months. And it wasn't secure also for the children to come to school. So, but it was minimal. It was minimal.
What was who closed the schools during the first Intifada, and what was the logic of it?
The Israeli occupation closed the schools. No,
yes.
They closed the schools. Yes. They want the students to be gathered, so that they will not go out on demonstrations and do things. Abla, you can.
Can I add something more on this? In some schools, the whole school year, I remember one school in Hebron, if I'm not mistaken, they had only 30 days. Their school year was only 30 days. And the children were not allowed to stay in their class. Regardless of how many days they were in school, regardless of whether they received the proper education or the education that they should be allowed, they were forced to be promoted to the second grade. And this was like a snowball. During the Intifada, we had a generation of children that were illiterate, and this affected the students as they were going into a secondary school and universities. The standard really dropped because of that. Schools were closed, but the closure was imposed by the Israelis, the Israeli military rule. And it went from, like 20, 2 years. I mean, out of 24 months, 20 months, the schools were closed on and off. So this has affected a lot of the skills that children needed to have that they needed to acquire while in school, like language, like mathematics, other subjects. Maybe it could have been done by because we worked on study packets for children, and they used to work on it with the help of their parents and teachers whenever allowed, because they were not allowed to be on the premises, on the school premises. All this needed to be done, had to be done in secret. So a lot of these skills were lacking and were harshly affected.
I mean, I remember I was part of this generation during the first Intifada. It was the only thing we liked about the occupation, closing schools. It was, but we paid the price. Some people have asked, there's many people on this call who know Jerusalem very well. Where is this school located in Jerusalem?
It's in the middle, behind Salah ad-Din Road, if they know Salah ad-Din.
There's some
very close to St. George's Cathedral. Very
close to St. George's Cathedral. Yeah.
For those who know the courthouse, it's behind. Actually, the parking lot of the courthouse is the entrance to the school. It was an empty lot when my aunt rented this building. She rented it as a house for herself, and then she turned it into a school. And then eventually she moved out because it was impossible, because we started adding rooms to it, and then we put on another floor to accommodate for a complete elementary school. And when the children saw us building another floor, they thought we were going to go into secondary education. They didn't realize that we just wanted to expand and provide more space, because all the 6 classes were downstairs yet. But it's across also the Christmas Hotel, if some of you know where the Christmas Hotel is. It's on Ali bin Abi Talib Street. If you have a map of Jerusalem, it's exactly within the parking lot.
But it's just behind the street, the street to the east of Jerusalem, behind St. George's Cathedral. So its location, so most of the students who attend the school are from Jerusalem.
Yes.
And Jerusalem.
And
sorry?
The suburbs, not the city center. Some of them come from,
Did the wall affect who comes to school, the wall that was built around Jerusalem, or it was, most people were just very close by?
No, it affected. I think they used to come from Kalandia and
that's right. Ram.
And Abu Udis and Ram and all this area. This affected them, definitely. Now they're basically from the old city and from East Jerusalem.
has asked for a question if you have some information on the update on the threats to close some schools in Jerusalem if they continue to follow the Palestinian curriculum, and if this is like, do you have threats for the church, for the Rawdat El-Zuhur?
We haven't reached that yet. I think, you know, they need classrooms. The municipality cannot provide all the classrooms needed for the children of Jerusalem. So in a way, okay, now they are trying to impose their changed curriculum, but it's not, they're not threatening, not yet. So we have to, you know, take it as it comes.
In the media, there were a number of schools who have announced that they have received threats to close them down if they continue to teach, like 3 or 4 schools in Jerusalem, at least I know. Rawdat El-Zuhur.
I haven't heard, no, we didn't have this at
Madaris al-Iman and the Ibrahimiyya school. These were the targeted. They said they will give them a license for 1 year, provided they change their curriculum. Although the curriculum is ironic, I mean, the curriculum after Oslo was completely changed, and it was done under the supervision of international committee and United Nations and so on. And I remember, what's her name? Nurit.
Yes.
What's Nurit?
Nurit Peled, yes.
Nurit Peled, Al-Hanan, yeah. She wrote a book about the curriculum, Israeli curriculum, and she says it's very, very ironic that they are restricting the curriculum which is approved by international body, whereas Israel, from grade kindergarten, they start instilling hatred in the hearts of the children and fear that the Palestinians want to kill you and they want to take you and get you and so on. And nobody even bothers to supervise this curriculum.
A question or a remark that a bunch of IDF or Israeli occupation forces have been seen stopping children going to school. Is this a recurrent event in Jerusalem?
It happens. I mean, it's, yeah, the harassment goes on. And it's very worrying for us, you know, and for parents. This is why many parents, you know, try their best to take their children to school. Don't, you know, what at the times when children could walk to school freely. Nowadays, you know, they worry that they might be stopped and harassed. These things happen, unfortunately.
So the school, as of now, serves from what age to what age?
Lower KG, which is 4, 5 years old, and up to 6th grade, which is, you know, 12 years.
And when students graduate, finish the 6 years, where do they go to? What kind of schools, private or also public?
Mostly go to, I think, they try to go to private schools. Most of them try to go to private schools, and we pride ourselves that these children are, you know, many schools love to have them because they are very well prepared, very well behaved. I mean, we are really proud of our students. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually once an encounter. We were being harassed as Sabil. Israel was imposing civil restrictions on civil society organizations through creating more pressure on the banks, and it's out of the confidentiality, but we were holding with some of the meetings at the bank, and one of the staff members gave us like a recommendation or an advice, a friendly advice, what is happening. And in a way, because I didn't know that person very well, and so when I asked him, because I wasn't sure, should I trust his recommendation or not? He said, I'm a graduate of Rawdat El-Zuhur.
Oh,
That was by itself enough, is that I'm also like on the same side. So that was really beautiful. And that was like one of the, like for them, that they were very proud that they were, I mean, even though that he was like an adult. So that was really inspiring for me. I want one more question is what the background, the economical background of the students today of the school are middle class, lower, what kind of categories do they come from?
mostly they are come from lower income families. I mean, the school is geared to accommodate these children who cannot afford to go to, to other private schools that take full fees. Our fees are subsidized by whatever we can fundraise for. We have many friends all over who are who love Rawdat El-Zuhur and are committed to help us with providing this quality education to the children. Unfortunately, the past few years, the economic situation has deteriorated all over. COVID has affected also. So the funds have become less and less. And this puts a lot of pressure on us because we are one of the very, very few schools, maybe Dar el-Tifl and us, do not take money from the municipality, from the Israeli municipality. Out of principle, because we feel this is conditional money. Whatever they give, they're going to impose conditions on us. So to keep our independence, we try to fundraise and provide the subsidies that are needed to because the children pay up to maybe 60% of the fees, and we have to fundraise for the 40%. And it's not easy. It's, it gets harder and harder. Very challenging.
Very few, less than a handful of schools have refused to receive funding. While not that everybody is eager to receive funding, many of the schools, other schools, they say it is we Palestinians pay high taxes inside Jerusalem, so we cannot not pay taxes. So in a way, it is when we ask for these funds, we're asking for, we're trying to get back, or we're fighting for our rights. What do you usually respond to people who say or offer this argument?
Yeah, there's nothing, nothing is given for free, They give you a small finger, and then they want the whole hand. This is what we believe, and it has been like that all the time. We act out of principle, and we believe in this, and we won't give in to it. We know that one day these schools, and this being done, that the money they receive is going to be, it's not going to be for free. There will be conditions, there will be imposition on them, and they're going to impose a lot of things, like changing the curriculum or threatening to close schools, etc., or to withdraw the funds. So we don't want to put ourselves in such a condition, in such a situation, if we are able to hold on. And with the help of our friends all over, and we keep praying that God keeps our friends and increase them, so that we can continue with our mission.
How can people fundraise or support this important school? I mean, how can people do like engage organizations or do fundraising on a personal level? What do they contact? Whom do they contact and how do they do it?
Samia can help me also in this. In the United States, there is the Embrace the Children of Palestine. It's an organization that receives funds that are tax-free. You know, there's tax exemption. And if it's earmarked for Rawdat El-Zuhur, it goes to Rawdat El-Zuhur. ANIRA is another organization. In
Global Ministries. And Global Ministries, they have a sponsorship program. People pay to the church to sponsor children, you know,
yeah,
children, and then the children write to them and thank them and so on. So
United Church of Christ.
yeah, this was the first type of funding for you would find organizations that would sponsor children. They would have people and the children would write. We always had even a staff member responsible for this sponsorship because it took a lot of work. You had to write letters to the sponsors and they would write back and so on. And this is still, I think, this is going on still with the global ministries, which is possible.
And in Europe, Samia, you remember, we have the Scottish Church, or?
No, in the UK we had,
in the UK.
but I think they have a new administration now, and they are not willing to help. I mean, they don't want to be involved with things like this. We have to find another way for the UK because you used to have quite a bit. The Bible Lands used to help, but then they stopped all their sponsorship program here completely. Yeah.
So they're mostly individuals who
Yeah.
Yeah.
And personal contacts. I mean, this is why we continue to, and when they come and see, which is very, very important, we have visitors that come and see the children dance, and they dance with them, you know, like Liz Knott was a very, very good friend, and we have beautiful memories. If some of you know Liz Knott, and she did a lot of fundraising for the school. And now actually the Embrace the Children of Palestine is a very supportive program. It was established by Samia Halabi and her sister and another friend, and they are trying to help as much as possible. So if you know of anybody.
We will include also a link in the email. We encourage people to make even like a $5 donation. Donation, and also share it with others.
Very often you can, instead of, for instance, instead of birthdays, we had a friend on everybody's birthdays, anniversaries, and then if somebody passed away, she always sent us money, which was really a very nice idea.
Yes, I think that's very important, and it's in a way just to keep the school independent. A part of just trying to control the curriculum, does also the Israeli municipality or the police or the government try to control what the teachers say in the classroom?
Yeah, we didn't have this. I mean, at Rawdat El-Zuhur. They cannot, you know, go into the minds of the teachers, I'm sure. But I don't know if in other schools this happens. But at Rawdat El-Zuhur, I mean, it has never happened. I mean, what we do, we are preparing children for life. it's not only educating them history and mathematics and things like that. Life skills is one of the things that we put emphasis on. We feel that, you know, as long as we try to enhance their sense of identity, that we are doing a great job with those children to be proud of themselves as Palestinians, to be proud of who they are, of their culture. So our curriculum is not only mathematics and languages. It includes cultural dancing, you know, the dabke and songs from our culture. So the children learn these things, you know, as part of the curriculum, and it's or extracurricular activities. But nobody comes and tells us don't teach them dabke because it's Palestinian. Not so. So far, nobody has interfered, and I hope it would be stupid if they do. I think.
Yeah, but they're experts in doing.
They do. I know they do.
It's not the only stupid thing that they are doing.
It's very sad. But I see Ryan has already started sharing the links for doing donations on the chat, but we will also send it to the whole list when we also share the recording of this event. There's still opportunity to write questions in the chat if people would like to do it. We have excellent two speakers who are giving excellent short answers. Usually, sometimes when we ask our usual speakers, they give us like a whole lecture after each question.
We are educators, but we don't lecture.
You do an amazing job.
Omar, I want to tell our audience something that is very special about Rawdat. They have something called the moral values tree.
Yeah.
We have it on top of the stairs as these children go up the stairs to their upper classes. It is the work of children. Every year they put a value that they want to adhere to, like honesty, friendship, love, helping others, cooperation, whatever. Can you think of something of the things, Abla, that are there? And every year they add a leaf to the tree. And it is a very important part of their life, and which makes them really feel responsible to, and this is what makes them special, you know, when as Omar was saying, that this graduate of, and you find them everywhere, and they stand out, you know, they stand out, although they are only elementary students, but that's when you start instilling values in the children. And then we started an alumni club also for them, so that they would come and meet again and meet each other and stay in touch. But I think with the COVID, this never stopped. And I don't think we picked it up again. I'm not sure.
There's a question, some people got confused. Is the school for girls only or mixed today?
No, it's co-education.
It's co-education, yeah.
But it started as a girls' one.
It started as a home for girls, but then when we changed to an official curriculum, and then we added, gradually we started taking boys. And I think it's healthier that way.
I mean, it's many people have claimed, and they've backed it up with numbers, that at the beginning of the 20th century, Palestinian women were the most educated in the Middle East because of the Rosary Sisters and Joseph Sisters, initiatives from the local community. Why do you think, or this question is open for both of you, why do you think we Palestinians have treasured or focused more on the education and inclusive education for all genders? different from other parts of the Middle East?
I mean, women education, the interest in women education went back to, I mean, I remember, like, if I want to talk about the Quakers, for instance, they came to Ramallah in 1860, and they established the Friends Girls' School in 1889. And it was, they started the school for girls. Girls were not, schools were not open for girls, or parents did not see this importance. But later on, after the Nakba especially, education for all became very important. People were realizing that we need to be, our very strong weapon is to be educated, is to have the, a degree, and to continue in good professions, to help our country, to help our nation. Since the schools were, with the, you mentioned St. Joseph's School also, there were not missionary schools, but church-related schools that were open to educate girls from the very early 21st century, 20th century. Now we are 2022, oh my God. I mean, from the 1900s, we started having schools for girls. So it became a tradition. I mean, it's a norm that girls have to go to schools. But I don't deny the fact that, some parents prefer to educate. They have money, they educate the sons, and they would pay for their sons to go to university. But they wouldn't do this for the girls if they don't have enough money, because the girl in the end, as they think, she's going to get married and will take care of her house. But these ideas are changing. People are, becoming more conscious of the need for education for girls, because they are the ones who bring up the children, and they spend most of the time with their children, and they bring them up. So it's important that the women are educated, because they pass this to their children. And we talk about equality. If a bird flies, it needs two wings, one man, one woman, and we need to, to make both wings strong enough for the bird to fly.
In 1924, in 1924, when my oldest aunt, started Birzeit with a friend of hers, with her teacher actually, it was meant to be for girls, because in the village, the girls were not allowed to go out. The boys would go walk to the closest city and get education. And it was meant to be a girls' school from the beginning. But then the men of the parents of the boys in town, they revolted, and they said, why are you teaching the girls only? We want also our boys. So from the start, it was almost co-education. I mean, they had few boys at the beginning, but then it became co-education school from the start, as early as the 20s.
Yeah.
So, but girls were, this is why, because she felt that the girls were not given enough opportunity, to learn.
I mean, it's in a way the Israeli curriculum, or the pressure they're trying to place on the Palestinian education system, they're trying to minimize the Palestinian narrative, or even eradicate it.
Definitely.
So to help us understand the Zionist narrative. If let's say things were different and we were able to influence the Israeli curriculum, what would be the main thing that you think, that both of you think is important to introduce in West Jerusalem for Israeli students?
History of Palestine. The truth.
Proper history, not the fake history.
Yeah, the history. We said it, both of us said it.
Yeah. A little bit of truth and reality.
Yeah.
Thank you, Omar, for giving us this opportunity to talk about El-Zuhur.
No, thank you actually for being with us, because it's also the principal of the school, right? The Jasser is also the secretary of the Sabil board. And actually she wanted to be with us, but actually she's doing babysitting because her daughter, or one of her daughters, is having another baby child. Another baby.
She's hardly coping. With three daughters, she's hardly coping with weddings and grandchildren.
Yeah, because it's every time when we have a Sabil board meeting and she says, my daughter is in labor, my daughter is in labor.
Okay.
It's wonderful and exciting. On behalf of everybody who's been with us today, and on behalf of the whole Sabil and the community, Kumi community, we want to thank you not only for this session, but also for your amazing contribution to the community in general, but specifically to Rawdat El-Zuhur. Change happens in small steps, and you are people who prove that change is possible. Even if it's impossible, you teach us that we should do it and try and attempt to do it. And we're following into your footsteps, and we know that you're following in you're moving in the footsteps of people who also have walked before you this journey. Thank you for being with us, friends. Thank you, Auntie Abla. Thank you, Auntie Samia. Amazing work, and let's hope that no place that there are children begging for food or anyone is deprived of education. It's a shame that everyone's spending so much money on military aid and war, and nobody's spending money where it is needed, healthcare and education. The same thing is like, it's also terrible in the US with student loans and so on. But the US is a bigger problem for us to solve. That's a problem. So,
thank you, Amos.
Peace and solidarity, dear friends. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.